Yep. Makes for a busy, productive life. And I love what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Moving, I can't remember. It might have been, I got to give a shout out to a couple of past guests. So Jarrett Button was on the show recently. I highly recommend checking his episode out. Probably one of the most centered um, peace drivers, happiness through suffering. Like very, very cool concepts that you don't hear talked about often, and very poised in his delivery. Um, and then there was Rain Zabin, a holistic coach out of Australia area, New Zealand, some east. I guess it's east. It's a globe that's round, but we call it the east, right? Part of the world. But they both. One of them mentioned the concept of not looking in the rearview mirror at life, or trying to drive forward while looking at the rearview mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's really deep. That's really deep and profound. And letting go of that so that you can move forward,
Yeah.
and not. And he talked about the destructive nature of journaling, which I thought that was really interesting, because everybody talks about that always being a positive, but prudence in all things, I guess. So do you have 3 resources that you recommend for visionaries as we dive in? We get ready to talk about inner work, moving from trauma to the trail of fulfillment as our best self. You're very articulate in how you go about creating a fulfilling life, and I love and appreciate that very much. I'm like, okay, there's some deep wisdom here. What resources would you recommend first?
Ooh, first, I would recommend your body.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. You
Nobody said that before. That's a really smart answer.
Yeah, you are always going to be your number one expert at you. Your life is not meant to look like or be exactly like anyone else's. And so bringing people back to themselves, back into their own authority, back into their own intuition, into their own decision making, you are always your number one expert. And so when I work with people, I'm guiding them back to themselves and to the expert that lives inside of them. We all have one. And it's this inborn wisdom of our physical vessel. It's always trying to communicate with us. It is always giving us the correct answers. It is always full of information that we can use to make the correct decisions for ourselves. And so always and forever, you are your number one expert.
Wow. That is deep. We're gonna have to come back to this, because sometimes I think my body's lying to me, or leaving me in the dark. So we will come back to this, because I wonder if other people feel the same. But I know I'm supposed to be able to, like, trust it and know what to do. So it's very good. Okay, what's resource 2 and 3?
Ooh, Dr. Gabor Mate. I adore him. I adore his work. I adore the way that he's leading really important conversations that are filling in really large gaps that have been missing in psychology, in medicine, just in being human. And he's one of the foremost thought leaders on trauma, on addiction, on ADHD, and really bringing in like the childhood developmental pieces. And I feel so expansive when I hear him talk, and I love the work he's doing.
I love that. In fact, I see that he was just on recently, the Diary of a CEO, which is a phenomenal podcast. And it's got a big title that says, "I regret my interview with Prince Harry." So there's all sorts of drama baked into that episode. But cool. That's a fun one. And again, those listening in, I am absolutely a fan of that show. What's number 3?
Number 3. Oh man, I have lots of other people that I respect and admire and appreciate. As far as like bigger names and like doing the work, there's several. Dr. Stephen Porges, he is the developer of polyvagal theory. Dr. Peter Levine, Bessel van der Kolk, he wrote The Body Keeps the Score. There's a theme here.
Yeah, I'm seeing this theme. They're all doctors. I'm just kidding. I know it's deeper than that. So what is the theme, though? Let's point it out for those who may not be catching the theme or know.
Yeah, it's back to the first piece, and that's that our body is such a magnificent vessel and has so much that it is capable of. It is so adaptable.
Mm.
And I think that I know that the way that we approach our body, especially from like the programming perspective of our society, is so counterproductive. And I know for a long time personally, like I resented my body, especially because I lived for a very long time
Mm.
with chronic pain, and that is still kind of intermingled in my experience. And so for the longest time, my body was my enemy. My mind wanted to go places. I wanted to do things. And I thought of this as like a hindrance, right? And it's actually like it has all of the answers, and it's done so much for me. And the way that it stores repressed trauma, repressed emotional experiences, and the way that it's formed to keep us safe. There are so many different systems that are operating inside of us at all times without our instruction.
Right.
That is, it's just mind blowing, the things that these bodies are capable of.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with that. And one thing that strikes me, a common core, now I'll look at this as I learn more about the doctors that you just recommended and the resources, is I love that you turn to mentors as your resource, not necessarily the resource that is the watered down version of the mentor itself, right? Any book is just a fraction of the original creator. And so that's really neat. And I have a feeling these mentors empower you rather than control you.
Mm-hmm.
If they're guiding you back to listen to your body, they're not telling you, I am the answer, as much as giving you the empowerment to know that you have it. And that is something that I absolutely look for in resources, and confidants and mentors. Anybody who tells me what to do or tries to control my vision, isn't necessarily, again, they can't see the lens of my life.
Right.
So it's a very limiting way to try to guide and lead people. So thank you for that, Meridyth. We're going to come right back on. We'll dive into Meridyth's vision. We'll talk about inner work. We'll be talking about moving from your trauma to what I call the trail of fulfillment, or the path to get there as our best self. And we'll be right back, everybody. Take notes. It'll be fun. All right. Welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We will be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum, founder and CEO of First Class Business. And I'm very excited to have Meridyth Driskill on the show today. We're going to be talking about trauma and fulfillment, as I mentioned, and being our best self. And we're going to try to get into some depth of how to dig that out of ourselves, also how not to be scared or afraid of doing so. We'll also talk about, should try to dive deep into how Meridyth and I can also up-level our own ability to dedicate ourselves to our trail of fulfillment as our best selves. We'll have some fun coaching each other in the process. So in addition to that, before I move into our topic, I always like to give resources that have been helpful to me. One of them is a podcast guest named Melissa Gray, who became a client, and she is with the Law Spot. We are now strategic partners in addition to our client relationship. And the big reason why is I spent too many years operating as a business owner and seeing thousands of business owners operate without legal protection by their side. Now, don't get me wrong. We did have, when I had my $20,000 lawsuit when I was at Restaurant Connect, somebody tried to steal our name. We had legal counsel, but we hadn't done our full due diligence. So even though we won that trademark lawsuit, did we really, when we spent $20,000 we didn't have on it? And every time I had interviewed different attorneys in business and people who could collect or protect intellectual property and help us in certain scenarios, I never felt comfortable with not only the advice that I didn't understand, but the general attitude and feeling of working with that entity. I never felt even like a number. Was like, well, we either work with them or we don't. They weren't very good at helping us feel like we were a valued client of theirs. I cannot say, I have to say so much actually about the value of Melissa Gray and how she leads and what she's up to. I hope you take the chance to hear her episode. And also, if you do not have legal counsel that you're comfortable with, just consider talking to her about what she's up to and how she's building out the spot on business blueprint to help you simplify your legal matters. Then there's Andrew Sosin. He's not a client. He just came on the show. I really appreciate his program. His program's called Recovery Unplugged. As Meridyth and I were just talking about, the programs, I call them the watered down version of the individual or the leaders, because they're the byproduct of what that person studies, right? That doesn't make the book Harry Potter bad. It doesn't make the programs that we build bad. What I'm saying is dive in as deep as possible when you find resources and people that can help you with your growth. Recovery Unplugged is all about helping people overcome addictions. And with COVID, they decided to move their platform to an online virtual version and create experiences online that did not used to be available in the past. And they incorporate music into their processes. They also have a 24/7 hotline to help people. So if you have somebody that you know that is going through an addiction and they could use help with that, that's exactly why I'm putting this on this show. Is we all know people who struggle with stuff. We know people who don't belong in society. They feel that way. They feel like an outcast. They're trying to escape life through different means of substances. Could be Netflix, could be ESPN, could be alcohol or drugs. I highly recommend reaching out to a program like this and seeking medical advice, or rather counseling and advice on what do I do in order to inspire and help my loved ones maximize and fulfill their potential and probably escape the darkness that they may be going through. In addition to that, we always want to talk about and bring up the Water Project. The Water Project is it's something that I don't really have to think about, so I choose to. I have access to water every single day, but I never want to forget that there's millions of people out there who do not. And so we constantly talk about the Water Project and we give back to it. And the neat thing is, when you give to one of the communities that the Water Project shows you can give to, you then receive email updates about what's going on with that project. You get to see the status updates. You get to see it come to fruition. So when you see these kids who don't have access to clean drinking water, they have to leave school in order to go get water for the community or for their families, or the parents have to leave work in order to go get water. It puts a tremendous amount of stress and pressure on an already struggling economy. Once they're able to produce that water well, you see these people celebrating it as though it's Christmas Day. It's one of the neatest experiences, the most humbling experiences of my life, is just looking at these pictures and thinking, man, I have never once had to go through that. Now, we've all been affected by COVID economics. There's a lot going on in the world. So if you don't have the ability to give back, my hope is that if you think of somebody who might, maybe just tag them in it and share this with them. Maybe just share it with your own communities. And if you have a cause that you feel is more important than this, or is something that you want to draw attention to, do not hesitate to use our platform to promote it. Go ahead and drop it in the comments. Let us know what you're up to. Maybe it's something that I will also rock the mic about and talk to people about and say, hey, here's another cause that we can go about giving back to. We've got 8 billion people in this world to help, and it doesn't hurt to give a little bit more and to go about doing that and helping each other out. So without further ado, we're going to bring Meridyth Driskill on board. We're going to be talking about the easywonderfullife.com a little bit, maybe a little bit about her brand transition as well, and how she's able to service as a holistic wellness practitioner. So Meridyth, thank you for joining me on Vision Pros Live.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So holistic trauma resolution practitioner.
Yes.
Let's break those words down for people a little bit. I'll let you lead. Just describe that title for us, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, holistic, I look at it from 2 different perspectives. Holistic being natural. We're not using pills or artificial means. We have all of the tools within ourselves to heal. And so we employ those tools. Sometimes we just need guidance to learn how to do things. And then holistic, I also look at it as like the whole, right? We're not just a head. We're not just a brain. We're not just a body. We're not just a soul. We're not just an energy system. We're all of these things. And to create sustainable transformation, we have to look at the whole organism, the whole human. You don't take your car to the shop and say, I put gas in it. I don't understand why it's not running. And it's like, right, well, what about like the radiator and the motor? Like there's all these pieces. And so like in our society, when we look at how we treat humans, everything is so compartmentalized. You go to a head doctor, you go to a heart doctor, you go to specialists, and it's like, what about the entire organism and how it functions as a whole? So that's that piece. And then trauma resolution. Basically, I help people to live from their hearts instead of their wounds. And that looks like being able to be fully expressed, authentic, setting and holding healthy boundaries, not self-abandoning, people-pleasing, perfectionism, like all of these patterns, right, that we get stuck in that are a result of trauma. And then how do we instead like collapse those patterns and insert my 3 pillars, which is safety, connection, and fulfillment.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm a big fan of shifting the focus from trauma to the fulfillment. I don't know if it's right or not. I know how it's helped me in my life. So I'm grateful that you have that as part of your vision. But to not define your vision for you, what is your vision for those that you serve?
For the people that I serve,
Mhm.
it's literally safety, connection, and fulfillment. It's how do we create a felt sense of safety within the body so that we are safe enough to connect with ourselves, to connect with our own emotions, to feel those emotions in a healthy way and not shove them down and store them in our bodies for them to later on manifest as physical dis-ease. It is how do we create the safety for us to connect with others in a deep and meaningful way, to create community, friendships, family, healthy relationships. A lot of times that looks like learning how to do things that weren't how you experienced them in childhood, right? A lot of times what we're taught and how we're taught to operate in a relationship, it's modeled and it's not the things that we want to perpetuate. So it's learning new relationship skills and then fulfillment. Who are you? Who are you with no expectation, no societal conditioning, no nothing? Like who do you want to be? What lights you up? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to do? What makes you feel alive? And how do we incorporate more of that into your life so that you're experiencing fulfillment and you can do whatever it is that sets your heart on fire?
I love it. And speaking of that, what sets your heart on fire for you? And what's your vision for yourself? Elaborating on those details a bit.
Well, there's personal and professional. And as a recovering workaholic, I'm going to answer the personal first. Travel lights me up. I love traveling. I love seeing the world through different lenses, different cultures, different languages, nature. So traveling and nature, those two things combined, I'm just
Mm.
like so happy. I don't know if you can handle me. Like,
Right. How was Peru? What was your favorite part?
I can't pick one thing. I hiked the Andes for 2 weeks with a shaman who was incredible. I think that the most my favorite part, I think what I learned about myself in the context of being able to travel, I learned how resilient I am. I learned how much joy and energy there really is in my body, and I learned how to connect to that and how to move that and keep that a consistent mill instead of damming it up. And yeah, I learned that I'm a really good time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And do you have a travel destination on the horizon?
I have several. I'm going to Dallas on Friday.
Cool.
Um, I am going to Hilton Head this year. I'm going to the mountains, I think twice. I think
The
next month.
mountains.
And yeah, I live in Tennessee. So we're heading to Gatlinburg with the kiddo. It's a secret for my birthday and for like schools
Try not
out.
to go viral.
Try not to blow up. But oh my gosh, that kid, he could find anything on the internet. It's terrifying. Um, yeah, we're going to the mountains a couple times. My assistant, who is also my best friend, she's helped me build my business over the last 5 years. She's flying in 2 weeks from Australia. So got a little piece of Australia coming here. And then I'm leading a group of people back to Peru in April.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's okay. Time for March, April. So a year from now. Oh,
Yes.
I'm gonna say in that case. Okay. I get lost in my months very quickly. All right. Well, that's a beautiful vision. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And let's dive into a darker subject.
Sure.
So, what is the worst leadership experience that you've ever had?
Mm. We have a lot we could choose from. Um,
Great.
how macro versus how micro do you want to get? Because I've got a lot to say.
Um, well, it's your time, your vision. So, whichever you feel is going to be the most helpful to those who are listening. I'll trust your lead.
Man, I mean, I've had have personal experiences with leaders who who didn't lead well. And I think that ultimately the worst leadership experience ever, I'm going to have to come back to me. I have probably been the worst leader of myself at times that I could have been. And that has been the thing that most impacted my life. And it was also based on what I thought leadership was, my relationship with leadership. I was raised in a very narrow-minded, very religious Southern Baptist family and community. And so there was a very, very narrow idea of what leadership looked like. And it was usually an older white man. And no matter what, you had to yield to that. And then it was also God, right? And like a very narrow concept of what God is, and a very specific context and relationship with that leadership and with that vision of God. And ultimately, like that, I think made me a worse leader for myself because I was disempowered, because I always thought that someone else should be leading me. That I was a world-class victim, right? The victimhood mentality was just refined on my end. And it was always like praying to God for, God's going to fix it. And then not doing anything about it. So I saw a lot of that growing up, like, oh, just give it to God, give it to God, give it to God. And it's like, what about my power? Like, what about me actually getting up and doing something to change a circumstance or to change a situation or to change a pattern or to take responsibility for something? So yeah,
Interesting.
a lot of that.
Oh no, it's huge. It's an interesting, it's a difficult conversation for people to have in today's world that's so polarizing, about events, and about how these different life experiences come together. I'm going to ask a pointed question. You're welcome to take it any way you want to. But so there's, we can grow up in homes where there's controlling white male. We can grow up in homes too where like religion domination or cult-like behaviors, dominate the environment, or atmosphere. Would you say that's led you to be anti-religion, anti-God, and now like, oh my gosh, all religion is evil and bad? Or is there room for harmony and balance, related to self-growth, self-empowerment, and perhaps relying on an external being, or maybe not external, maybe that's not the word for it, but a being that's higher than oneself? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. It definitely led me into rebellion for a long time. And that, I mean, like, that's just one of my very strong parts. Like, if I'm not perfect, then like the rebellious comes out really quickly. So I definitely rebelled for a long time. And it was because when I asked questions, I wasn't met. There wasn't dialogue. It was, no, it's just this way because we said so. Shut your questions down. And so I felt silenced, which is another really great way to bring out the rebellious part of me. So I left the church for a really long time. I wanted nothing to do with it. I thought it was evil. It made me uncomfortable. I didn't want to be around it because it felt like rejection and suppression. And so for a long time, I wanted nothing to do with that, with God, with Jesus, with any of the religious constructs that I was raised in. And I did a lot of traveling, and I explored a lot of really interesting conversations with people from different religions from all around the world. And what really leapt out at me was that love is the center of all of it. And there's so much that's getting lost in the messaging. There's so many things that are prioritized over the message of love. And it is not God that's doing this, right? This is very much the creation of humans. And so when I see religion being used as a way to control people through the mechanisms of fear and guilt and shame, I get real spicy. Mm-hmm. And just in the last few years, there has become room for God to come back in, and for me to be able to connect to God and to have my own experience of God and experience God in everything, and the magic and the beauty of that. And I feel there's so much power in connecting to something higher than ourselves.
Right.
And and getting to have a spiritual connection to ourselves, to our own divinity, and to all that is, I mean, I don't want to do life without that
Right.
now.
That's cool. It sounds like it's a constant opportunity for exploration, right?
Mhm.
And expansion of what
Absolutely.
is there, not an absolute like, oh my gosh, this was wrong, so now I will only do this. But like there's layers and processes of discovery that go on. And so thank you for willing to put yourself out there. As far as worst leadership experience goes, that's it's powerful to take accountability, for every situation we are in life, or at least our potential part in it. So I hope other people can understand the value of doing that while, again, keeping your confidence and like who you are, and you emulate that. It's like, I think you have a great appreciation for yourself. I hope you do. That's what I see. And that's what I would always hope for anybody who might throw themselves under the bus, so to speak,
Mm.
right as the world might portray that, or the news. But yeah, that was a very good example. What is your best leadership experience? What's the best leadership experience you've ever had?
Mm. I just think of this a certain type of leader. I can name specific people: Ta Whitty, Cole Whitty. Those are two friends and mentors who are incredible leaders. But I think the qualities that I respect the most, that allow me to sink into a trust from a place of like being led, is being willing to be seen as imperfect and not hide that, and just say like, I'm a human and I'm figuring it out, and here's how I'm figuring it out. um like I love being able to see the two people that I just mentioned, Cole and Ta Whitty. They're in Austin, Texas, and they're incredibly, yeah, they're brilliant human beings. And I was at a conference that they were doing, and they got into an argument. They're husband and wife, they own this business together, they do these trainings together, and they got into an argument, and they paused everything, and they sat on the stage together, and they worked through this argument together, and in front of everyone. And it was the most beautiful example of leadership that I've seen, because it was like, their work is so embodied, right? Like, I'm going to be my whole fully expressed, most authentic self at all times, including my big emotions. And I get to do that in real time, and also show people how you can do that, how you can communicate differently, how you can be your fullest self and have all of your emotional experiences, and do it in front of people, and do it in a way that inspires people to grow and do things differently and look at things differently. And that was just an incredible experience to witness. We were all really grateful that we were able to see this like fight play out on
Yeah.
stage.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's again, I'll go back to that word context. That that can be such a dangerous and hard thing to do, because it takes two to tango, in that reality. And so that can go very poorly, very fast with a person who's not on the same page about doing that. Somebody can quickly feel disrespected and feel like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, that's my vulnerability to talk about or share. So I would have loved to have been involved in seeing that too, and seeing how that played out. And because the way you describe it says that there was a magical, like holistic feeling, about this experience. And that takes tremendous leadership to be willing and able to do.
Yeah.
So if this was your last opportunity to share a powerful lesson with the world, what powerful lesson can other visionaries learn from your experience?
Mm. So much of what I've been feeling and moving into and deeper into and just navigating lately is the power of the body. And we live in such a cerebral culture where our intellect and our productivity and our performance and our brains are so very important and pedestalized, that we live from here, or up here in a state of dissociation. And there's so much richness and so much magic to be had in life just by coming back into the body and being available to experience all of your emotions, and to learn how to navigate those with grace, with skill, with ease. And just the richness of life when you get to be inside of your body and to feel it all and to be present for it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Like all of it, just the preciousness of being alive and having the ability to wake up and drink coffee, to book a trip, to hike mountains, to enjoy time with your kids, like just all of the magic that's available. And even the tiniest moments when you get to be present in your body and available and open to the entire experience.
It's a big concept. I don't know how many people listening would consider themselves cerebral or intellectual, perhaps a lot. But bear with me for those of you who are going on this thought process. I grew up super emotional, and with 5 older sisters and my mom. Right, emotions were pretty high in the house with a bunch of women, and in addition to that, I was the youngest of all of my siblings, and so it was easy for my stepbrother to, he's 2 years older than me, and he loved to point out how much smarter he was, at that time. An older cousin, same thing, and so I grew up thinking that I was almost pure emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out, StrengthsFinder 1.0 learner was my number one trait. And I've turned to my more cerebral part of existence, like a strategist, business, and all that too. Like, so now most people think I'm purely strategy. And when I take off those external forces that want to define me, and look back and feel my own life or think through my own life, I've always felt like, oh no, those go hand in hand. Those don't separate. They're part of the process. So when I hear you say like separate the brain or the thought process, the cerebral aspect, I'm like, yeah, we are so plugged in. We are constantly thinking about the time of the appointment, how much time is in the clock for the show, who I have to coordinate for next, what strategy has to come into place for X, Y, or Z, even what programs coming on TV, when is the NBA, playoffs happening? Like there's so much that is constantly going around. What book am I going to read next? What post am I going to make? Do I share this picture or that picture? There's so many thought processes that we take for granted. What are we going to eat? Where are we going to sleep? Some things like that come up too. Am I going to go to the store and get groceries? It just never ends. So I can see the need to disconnect from a lot of that, but I would love to hear your thoughts, your expertise on this. What does that mean to you to kind of disconnect from the brain? And how do we balance that with, or the cerebral, and how do we balance that with the rest?
Brain. I want to clarify, not to disconnect from the brain, because again, that's part of the body. That's part of the machine, and we're grateful for the whole thing in its totality, right? So it's more of just like, instead of always making decisions from the brain, because it's going to be a 50-50 crapshoot, it's learning how to be in the present moment. Like all of those things that you were talking about, they were either like past or mostly forward focused. And so when you're really, really forward focused, how much of your bandwidth is going to something that's not the present task? Yeah. So it's actually just reclaiming the thoughts and bringing them into the present moment. And it's like, okay, actually, what does my body feel like? How do I feel on this call? How do I want to feel on this call?
I'm hungry.
Okay, cool. So your body's communicating to you. So if you were to go and get a snack right now, and if you were to eat this, I wouldn't care personally, but also like, then you get to tell your body like, hey, you're safe. You're not in survival. I'm going to listen to your cues. I'm not going to bypass you. I trust you. You can trust me. That deepens and fortifies that relationship of trust. And I don't know if you feel this way, but how I show up as a business owner when I trust myself is radically different.
Yes, absolutely. It's huge. Yeah. Confidence, and the influence of that by keeping our commitments and, staying centered and all that. It has a massive effect on our ability as a business owner. For sure.
And a massive effect just in like, am I keeping my commitments? What about your commitments to yourself? Are you rested? Are you hydrated?
I think that's one of the fun things about that hungry thing too. It's like there's layers of listening to this stuff, right? I remember listening to Jim Gaffigan talk about, how he hasn't been hungry in 20 years. He's making fat jokes about himself in this moment. And I remember feeling that and being like, oh my gosh, like I can relate to that. And then I was like, wait, hunger is my metabolism talking to me. And it's okay I'm not starving. And I'm not depriving myself of food. But is it my body telling me like, hey, cool, I'm getting rid of excess? There's a fine line, of course, between, again, the starvation, deprivation, and allowing your body to process I don't know what you'd call it, the nutrients. I'm not going Dr. Jackson on anybody today, but you know what I mean? There's a good thing. There's a good balance to being hungry and not always being full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And being hungry and being full are like opposite ends of the spectrum.
Right.
There's a nice little middle area. And it's also like if I'm super present with my body and I know what I have coming up, then it's like, okay, great. My body's really hungry. What would make my body feel best right now? Ooh, some protein. Oh, a piece of fruit. Oh, you know what? I need some carbs right now. And then it's like, it's literally just like being in the present moment. The body is always giving us more information. And the more present we are, the more present we are in our bodies, the more we have consistent and reliable access to this information so that we know what our physical body needs, so that we can clearly communicate and articulate, so that we can take powerful action and meaningful steps that move the needle forward, right? So that we're adequately prepared for our mission. And we're always up here and trying to make decisions from up here, thinking about the next thing. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, what does this person think about me? Like, no, how do I feel in my body right now? How does my body feel right now? Oh, I'm feeling unstable. Okay, there's some wavering here. Okay, let's sit with that. Where am I feeling that? Okay, I feel that in my gut. Where is that sense of wavering coming from? Where do I feel unstable? What can I stabilize more? Oh, okay. It's this thing in my business. Great. Okay. What's there? Okay. I don't like how I showed up as a leader. I could have done this better. I need more stability in myself. Okay, great. Great. And instead of like getting caught up in the ego stories, getting caught up in the mind of, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Oh, you failed at this thing, or you could have done this better, or who do you think you are? Like instead of the runaway train, right? It's literally just like, what feels unstable? Oh, it's me. It was how I showed up in that. Okay, great. How can I show up better? Instead of what does it mean about me? I'm going to beat myself up. I'm the worst, right? It's okay. How do I clean that up? How do I show up differently? What would it require for my body to feel really stable in that? Okay, envisioning that, like me showing up in that in my highest capacity as my highest self, how would that feel in my body? How would I feel? And then feeling that. And
The
then
cerebral nature of these questions, to me, is that's the fun argument. That's the fun debate about, like, you didn't learn to ask those questions as a baby. It took a sincere amount of education from an external standpoint to grasp those concepts. Right. And so you're 100% right. And it's, I guess each one of us has the opportunity, the need to dive in and say, okay, wait, what do we need? But also, where do we lack the words or the knowledge? Because you mentioned carbohydrates, you mentioned proteins and those aspects. And I'm like, ooh, I need to do a better job of educating myself on the difference between those. Much like a child is like, I'm hungry, I should eat a Snickers. Right. Oh, I'm hungry again, I should eat another Snickers. Now it's like you go after your cravings. But business owners are so guilty of this, just as much as a child is, of, oh, well, I need growth because I don't feel good. So let me just go buy a software because I'm going to pretend I'm a chief technology officer. I'm going to solve that problem, with the skills I don't have, and make all these assumptions. I'm just going to feel it forward. Like, no, you're not going to win just feeling that forward. There is an education component that also belongs with the the spiritual and the logical, I guess. Those things go hand in hand, and they prepare us to make these better choices. And so the inner work that goes on to be able to listen, in my opinion, also has to be combined with that thought of best self, right? Best self being, what am I going to? For me, it's, am I centered with myself, and also am I progressing, and doing making the relationships that will cultivate a great relationship, rather a great life for myself, as well as um, looking at how do I exercise my purpose. What is my purpose here, and am I diving into that, or am I allowing others, to control what that looks like?
Mm.
What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a few different pieces that you said that jumped out at me. And one of them was like the best self. And anytime I hear someone say like my best self, I'm like, okay, so if you don't show up as your best self today, how much do you judge yourself?
That's a great question. My answer to that is actually, it's one of my favorite topics. Part of being my best self is also being my best at forgiveness.
Mm.
And what does that mean? That means that if I have a negative experience, a lot of people would say, well, sleep on it. I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll fix things then. Like, no, my best forgiveness is forgiveness. Bam. Like, I'm done. I'm forgiving myself now, so that the very next moment I can move into being my best self yet again, without having to indulge in a self-inflicted rut that is arbitrary, based on a timetable that doesn't, in my opinion, really exist. Right? It's like, no, I'm just going to move right back into that.
Yeah,
That would be my definition.
I like that. I like to use infinite self.
Hmm.
There's like a Meredith that has zoomed out and can see it all, and knows exactly how she wants to show up and how she needs to show up and what she needs to say and what she needs to do. And so I like to just, she's the person I'm always like checking myself against, comparing to, right? But not from a place like you said. I like that a lot. The reframe of like being the best at forgiveness. Yeah, like having compassion towards myself. So much change. This is one of the biggest ruts that I see people getting stuck in, and it's like the discipline, the hustle, the force into their best lives, their best selves, and it's
Mhm.
done from a place of like self-loathing. And I need to be different.
Right.
I need to be fixed. I need to be better, do better. And that's like we're being
Well,
driven
and
and
there's another culture part of that too, where a lot of other people are very focused on being better than. Right? They want to be the best.
Mhm.
So now it's not only a competition against self, it's also a competition against 8 billion others. Like, how daunting. Like, I don't have any need to be better than anybody else. If I just show up as my best self, right? If that's what I can do, then I can very much appreciate whether I won or I lost, if it's a competition, right? Basketball or something like that, because I've done what I needed to prepare for that competition or that moment or that experience. And I'm going to therefore be happy with the result. But there's some conditioning, probably with mindset too, to say, you know what, I'm going to allow myself to appreciate where I'm at. And Namaste really taught me that. That was the book, um, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. Very, very good therapeutic book. And she talks about how Namaste means myself honors yourself,
Mm.
and change. So I am perfect how I am. You are perfect how you are, and change is perfect. And I was like, huh, that's, I don't know, it just really set in with me. I was like, I can dig that for sure. No matter who says like, what, you just said you're perfect. That's like, you can struggle with that. Bless you. You're good where you are. I'm good where I am, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep moving.
And
So.
I'm going to keep moving forward. Yeah, there was a while when I was like in my conversations of like trying to figure out life and God and all of those things. And I love Buddhist psychology. I think it's really interesting. And so I went through this phase where I was like, wait, well, I very much understand the value of like learning to be okay with all that is as it is. And that's like a very Buddhist philosophy based, like be good with it always, be good with all things.
Right.
And so, but then I was like, but what about like, okay, I can do that. I can be present with my joy, with my sadness, with my rage. Like I can be present with all of those things. And I want to create different. I want to create more. I want to do more. I want to see, like, I'm so inspired by human beings. Like, seeing people on American Ninja Warrior, I'm like, they're like humans that have trained Olympics, for example. Like, anything is possible. If these human beings can do like 38 swirly bird jumpy flippy kicks on ice on tiny little blades, then like I can go to the gym today, you know?
That's well put.
But it's like humans are just so inspiring. And it's like, I want to be okay with everything as it is. And I also want to be a conscious creator. I want to be the captain of my ship. I want to see how far we can go. I want to ride this till the wheels fall off. I want to squeeze all the juice out of it. And the more I do that, the more I'm like, I want everyone on earth to feel this way. And it really gets to like down to clearing out the trauma and all of the things that keep us from being able to enjoy this. And it's like I had an experience with plant medicine a while back, and God told me, I gave you a nose, I gave you eyes, I gave you skin, I gave you a tongue, I gave you all of these things for you to experience pleasure. What are you doing? All of these things are for you to experience pleasure. What are you doing with it? Are you experiencing pleasure, or are you just digging in the dirt, looking at your past, looking at your, current self, finding ways to beat yourself up, finding ways to judge yourself? All of these things are right mind and ego stories where we're not being present in the moment to the smells, to the sounds, to all of the possible ways that we can experience joy and pleasure in the moment. And it's like, that is what this life is about. It's about, I think, creating whatever it is that we want, that is beautiful, that feels good, that feels connecting, that feels joyful. And I just like, it feels so good to be in the body and to have access to these experiences. And it's like, what a gift, what an absolute gift to be able to smell the flowers that are blooming right now, to hear the birds chirping and the wind chime. Like, if we, it's like so many people get so focused on like performance and metrics and pushing things further and further and further. And it's like, if you were really, really happy with yourself, would you do these things to the extent that you do? Because ultimately, I think that trauma is the root of all of the things on this planet that suck. So war, corporate greed, all of these things I think are trauma based. And if we had more leaders who were resolved in their trauma, who knew how to feel their feelings and then not let their senses of inadequacy or childhood stuff come up and like, I have to have the most, I have to have the highest sales, I have to have the most money accrued, I have to have the most boats, like whatever it is. Like, you're just trying to validate some very hurt small part of you that needs those things in order to feel loved and acceptable and like you are worthy of existing on this planet. And so if we have more leaders that are resolved in their trauma, that know how to feel their feelings, that know how to be in their bodies, and that know how to experience joy, I think we're going to have people creating from a lot cleaner place energetically, and that are looking around like, oh man, I've got more than what I need.
Yeah.
How can I help other people create this? How can I help other people, like what you're doing with the water project? Absolutely incredible and amazing. I just think that when we're not living from our trauma, we get to live from our hearts. And I know that human beings are incredibly compassionate and amazing people. And when we're not connected to our heart, because we have to guard it, because it's not safe, because our heart has been hurt before, that's when we're operating from like, driving the metrics. I see so many entrepreneurs reach such high levels of success on paper and in finance, and their bodies crash. And it's like, okay, well, you were really successful in one way, but you completely wrecked your health. And that's because you were ultimately trying to earn something, right? Get some validation, love, approval, ego story met, right? So that you could think about yourself in a certain way, so that you could tolerate yourself in any given experience, so that you can accept yourself as a human being on this planet. And you cannot be intimate with yourself, because in order to have done this, you had to bypass so many of your own things that were coming up, your own body, right? Like, I know I need to eat a protein right now. I need to eat some carbohydrates right now. Like, I see these entrepreneurs just like
I'll give the Buddhist answer.
What?
I'll go with the Buddhist answer of maybe. Right. It depends on the person. right? And their elements. So I would also add a giant if, before a lot of what you said, if you are doing those things from the point of pain or from the point of trauma. And I think that's a really important correlation. Those people who do the 32 jump flippy things that you talked about, for instance, right? There's a lot of pain, suffering, friction that has to occur for that strength to be built up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily all built up from trauma. Right there's also this purpose side. And I love what you said when you wrote it too. And you also just talked about it in great detail in a very great fashion. So my vision is that every human on earth is fed, clothed, and hugged. Oh, that was cool. Imagine a world where everyone is fulfilled, at peace, and in total acceptance. This is where I pulled the best thing out from, but I realized I didn't pull it from your words. And in total acceptance of who they are. Now imagine the number of violent crimes and wars that would exist in that society or would not exist. Right? That's a big shift, right? I truly believe that if enough people have the courage to do the inner work, this reality is possible. And so just centering all of that, I don't think that you were saying that growth and metrics only come from a position of trauma.
No.
And those who are stuck with that mindset, they're like, oh my gosh, that's where my fulfillment comes from. That's my value and worth is the external achievement. That's a sad day.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more to life than that. And that's what I see you bringing to the table to those who are listening. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know that I personally I want to have more money than God, and that's because I want to go do really cool things with that. And
are you doing the things necessary to put yourself in that wise steward position to achieve? And how much time do you have? We've gone over a little bit. I don't want to. I've got Steve Ramona next. So shout out to Steve Ramona of the podcaster. You have to check that out. Doing business with a servant's heart. That's one. So we've got a meeting in 3 minutes. So I'm going to have to wrap this up. I don't want to. I want to continue this conversation. But what everybody just heard Meridyth talk about was having the purposeful drive of wanting to give her whole heart and soul, to not only like achieving what she wants for herself, but also making sure that this world becomes a better place for all those who do go through struggles and traumas and all that. And I love that. I look forward to catching up with you further about that as well.
Yeah.
Because and I wanted to have a deeper conversation about what that looks like and means, because does that mean we bust our butt until we die tomorrow because we haven't achieved that goal, like within the next 24 hours, or what does the balance look like on that? And how do you define that as a visionary for yourself? Because most of us who've gotten to the point where we're at least willing to consider ourselves as visionaries, or we have a vision. Oh, that's a daunting reality to deal with. It's like, man, what am I called on to do today versus tomorrow? So we'll have to end on that. But those of you who were encouraged, inspired by Meridyth's story, what she's up to, we're going to put action steps in the show notes as well, so you can follow along and see where she's going to take you to next on this journey. Feel free to skip her next episode in that process. You can reach straight out to her and find out, do you want to go to, excuse me, do you want to go to Peru with her next year? Do you want to get involved in this Dallas trip that she's going on? I'm sure you can just ask her online and see, she might say yes, she might say no. And then if you'd like to be a guest on the show as well and discuss your vision, top right corner, click on Be Our Guest, apply. And if your vision is to help and serve others out there, and then come on and tell me about it. Let me know what it is. We'll be happy to try to get you on the show. And if there's anything you want to add, Meridyth, before I wrap up, I had to do a hard stop, and I don't like to do that to people.
All good. I'll just be very brief. The human mind is absolutely incredible. I learned this from Peru. These civilizations, these structures, these intricate things that have been created. And it's the thing that I learned was like, when the head and the heart are bridged, anything is possible. Humans are incredible. We're capable of anything.
I'm a huge fan of that concept. So those of you thinking about it, go think and feel about that. See how it feels in your head and heart. And we will see you on the other side. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining in. Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time.